In the expansive garden of his Connecticut mansion, billionaire Edward Hawthorne found himself rooted to the spot, his heart heavy as he witnessed a poignant scene unfold. A skilled bricklayer with work-hardened hands and weathered clothes sat on the grass feeding his little girl, Mia. This was a sight Edward had not anticipated. Mia had been the light of his life, but after a tragic accident 2 years ago left her blind, their relationship had grown increasingly strained. "Just one more spoonful, sweetie," the bricklayer, Anthony Davis, said gently, his warm demeanor contrasting sharply with Edward's emotional distance. Mia's laughter rang out, a melody that Edward had almost forgotten. At just 8 years old, she hadn't smiled like that in his presence for far too long. With surprising dexterity, she reached out and found Anthony's face. "Can you tell me more about the colors in the garden, Anthony? I want to see through your eyes." This simple request twisted Edward's heart. How could this man, who had known Mia for only a short time, connect with her in a way he, her own father, could not? Edward Hawthorne was the owner of Hawthorne Enterprises, one of the most successful construction firms in the nation, specializing in high-end buildings that transformed cityscapes. Yet, he felt utterly helpless when it came to bridging the emotional chasm between himself and his daughter. The accident was a faraway memory now, set in motion by a drunk driver and a blind curve. Edward had been driving that day, and while he emerged physically unscathed, the emotional wreckage had consumed him. Since then, Mia had been under the care of expensive nannies and caregivers, while Edward buried himself in work, confined to his office in the city or hidden away in the upper floors of his lavish home. The arrival of Anthony's team to renovate the garden should have merely been a routine project. However, Edward noticed a subtle shift taking place, one he was unprepared to face. Mr. Hawthorne, his housekeeper, Mrs. Larson, interrupted his morose thoughts. "You have an important call from our partners in Shanghai regarding the new high-rise." With a nod that felt almost robotic, Edward averted his gaze from the garden, retreating toward his office. As he walked past a framed photograph of his late wife, Sarah, he whispered, "You would know what to do, Sarah. You always knew." That afternoon's meeting fell flat. Edward distractedly flipped through papers while his thoughts kept drifting back to the touching scene he had witnessed. On returning home later that day, he found Mrs. Larson awaiting him with concern etched on her face. "Sir, Mia's art teacher called. She missed her 3rd class in a row," she stated, concern radiating through her tone. "What do you mean? Didn't the caregiver take her?" Edward inquired, unease seeping into his voice. "Mia refused to go, sir. She said she hates art now that she can't see the colors," Mrs. Larson reported. A heaviness settled in Edward's chest, only intensifying the guilt he had been wrestling with. Sarah had been an art teacher, and Mia had always loved her lessons. That night, Edward wandered downstairs to get a glass of water, unable to shake the images of joy and laughter he had seen in the garden. To his surprise, he heard familiar voices drifting in from outside. Quietly approaching the back door, he caught sight of Anthony seated beside the fountain, engaging with Mia. "Since I went blind, my dad doesn't love me anymore," Mia stated, her voice clear and strikingly candid. "He can't even be in the same room with me." "Don't say that, little one," Anthony replied, his tone firm yet gentle. "Sometimes adults struggle to deal with pain, especially when it involves those they love the most." "Have you lost someone you loved?" Mia asked, her innocence piercing the tension in the air. A brief silence followed before Anthony spoke. "Yes, my daughter Lily. She was almost your age." Edward froze. There was something deep and familiar in Anthony's voice that tethered him to the shadows. "What happened to her?" Mia asked. "She was ill. Cancer. We fought for 3 years, but—" Anthony took a moment to compose himself. "What I learned, Mia, is that the time we have with the ones we love is too precious to waste on fear." Edward stepped back, horrified, as the realization hit him. He had not been protecting Mia. He had succumbed to cowardice. Climbing the stairs back to his empty room, one burning question lingered in his mind. What kind of man abandons his daughter in her greatest hour of need, while a stranger, who carries his own unbearable pain, finds the strength to comfort her? What Edward did not know was that Anthony Davis was not just a humble bricklayer. His story contained depths far beyond anyone's comprehension in that opulent mansion. The truths that would emerge in the days to come would drastically change the lives of all involved. As the days rolled on, Edward's investigation regarding Anthony intensified. Discreetly and under a veil of anonymity, he employed a specialized firm to dig into the personal history of the bricklayer. "I want to know everything about him, especially this daughter he mentioned," he ordered, his voice cold as he spoke on the phone, fixated on the live feed from the garden cameras. Through the screens, he watched as Anthony demonstrated remarkable patience, guiding Mia in experiencing the garden through her senses. Edward listened intently, haunted by the way Anthony described the colors. "This red is like the warmth of the sun on your face during a summer afternoon." Edward couldn't escape the weight of guilt gnawing at him. 3 days later, a report arrived, and Edward opened the envelope with shaky hands. Inside was the portrait of Anthony, 42 years old, graduated with honors in civil engineering, married to a woman named Amelia, now deceased. Father to Lily, also deceased, succumbing to the ravages of leukemia at just 7 years old. After suffering tremendous loss, Anthony had abandoned his promising career, seeking solace in manual labor that could ground him, pulling him back from the precipice of despair. Edward escaped into a daze, grappling with the discovery. Anthony was not merely a bricklayer, he was a trained engineer capable of managing vast construction projects. How could someone like him find a way to keep smiling after losing everything? That night, Edward mustered the courage to enter Mia's room while she was asleep for the first time since the accident. Hesitantly, he reached out and brushed his fingers through her hair, a gesture of connection that felt foreign yet essential. The following morning, something unexpected happened. He cancelled 3 significant meetings and planned a picnic for Mia. She emerged from her room and was visibly shocked at the sight of her father waiting for her in the kitchen. "I thought we could spend the day together," he said, mustering a smile. "Really, Dad? Aren't you busy?" she asked, her innocent question striking him hard in the chest. The awkwardness of the day weighed in as they sat closely to where Anthony was working. When Anthony approached them, he initially prepared to walk away, but Mia called out. "Anthony!" she exclaimed. "My dad is here today. Come meet him." The two men exchanged a glance, filled with unspoken messages. In the following weeks, a new routine began to emerge, and Edward couldn't shake the question. How could someone who had lost so much still be so present for Mia when he, her own father, was struggling to be in the same room with her? One warm afternoon, he approached Anthony. "How do you do it?" Edward's vulnerability became palpable as he spoke. "After everything, how can you be here for my daughter when I can barely face her without drowning in guilt?" "When Lily was dying, she made me promise something," Anthony replied, setting down his tools. "She made me promise to keep seeing the colors. At that moment, I didn't understand what she meant." He glanced toward Mia, who was joyfully seated near the fountain. "Your daughter is alive, Mr. Hawthorne. She needs you to see her colors, not just the darkness." Those words struck Edward like lightning. He realized he had spent 2 years blinded by the enormity of Mia's disability instead of cherishing the vibrant spirit she still possessed. The next day, an unexpected envelope landed on Edward's desk, a medical file accompanied by a note regarding Dr. Peterson, the neurologist who had diagnosed Mia's blindness. Inside were serious allegations detailing his history of reckless diagnoses and questionable treatments. As Edward read, horror swept through him. Was it possible that Mia's blindness wasn't a permanent condition? What if Dr. Peterson had overlooked significant signs? One name caught his eye: Lily Davis. He dropped the envelope, connections colliding in his mind, linking Mia's accident, Lily's death, and Anthony's presence. Could it be that the man who lost his daughter to this doctor was now seeking retribution? As he drove home that evening, Edward grappled with a whirlwind of emotions, hope intertwined with fear. What did Anthony truly want? Why did he want to be in Mia's life? Why had he sent that file anonymously? The answers were closer than he thought, ready to unfurl a dark conspiracy that could challenge Edward's perception of loyalty, justice, and revenge. The moon cast a dim light in Edward's office as he continued his furious typing, consumed by a newfound investigation. Papers spread across his mahogany desk revealed a disconcerting pattern that was shaping before his eyes, disturbing connections that linked Anthony to the documented malpractice of Dr. Peterson. The following morning, Edward called an urgent meeting with his trusted attorneys. "I want to dig deep into Dr. Peterson's records. I want to know every cent that has crossed his accounts for the past decade and who is protecting him." As the lawyers left, Edward remained transfixed, gazing out at the garden where Mia was engaged in yet another lesson from Anthony. Now he felt less anger and more apprehension. "Sir, Anthony is on the line," his secretary's voice interrupted. "Mr. Hawthorne," Anthony's voice came through with an urgency that left a chill down Edward's spine. "We need to cancel work for tomorrow. I have a crucial doctor's appointment for Mia." "Mia? Why would you take my daughter to the doctor?" Edward questioned, unease creeping into his voice. "I think it's time we spoke face to face tonight, when Mia is asleep." The hours that followed blurred past as Edward cancelled all his meetings, returning home to find Mia and Anthony sharing a laugh in the garden. Watching them together made it hard for Edward to discern innocence from manipulation. Anthony's kindness suddenly felt shrouded in darkness. When Mia finally fell asleep, Anthony awaited Edward in the office, placing a folder on the table without preamble. "I believe you may have received similar information," Anthony said, his expression unyielding. "I was the one who sent the first envelope. I needed to know if you would wake up to the truth." "What is happening, Anthony?" Edward's voice was cold. "Dr. Peterson is not just incompetent, he's a criminal. He's been conducting unauthorized experiments and misdiagnosing patients to involve them in his protocols. My Lily wasn't truly sick. She had a treatable illness that was misdiagnosed. Your daughter, Mr. Hawthorne, is not permanently blinded. Her condition can be reversed with the right care." The shocking clarity of Anthony's revelation enveloped Edward, who was struggling to process those words. "Why didn't you go to the authorities?" "I tried," Anthony replied, bitterness lacing his tone. "Dr. Peterson is protected by powerful entities. I have proof, but I need someone with enough influence to expose him." "So you decided to grow close to Mia to manipulate me," Edward accused, defensiveness swelling. "No," Anthony's eyes sparked with intensity. "I took on this job because I knew he had treated my daughter. I became close to Mia because she reminds me of Lily and because no child should have to endure the same horrors ours did." Edward wrestled with conflicting emotions. Distrust mingled with hope. "I'm not asking you to trust me," Anthony clarified. "I'm asking you to trust the evidence." He slid another folder across the table. "I contacted Dr. Bethany Wells, an expert in ocular neurology. She's reviewed Mia's tests and confirmed the possibility of treatment. But we have to protect her from Dr. Peterson. He must not know we're investigating." "Why not?" Edward's expression darkened. "Because Mia is not the only one. Other children are affected, and I believe he's gearing up for a new phase of experiments. A few years ago I attempted to confront him, and shortly thereafter Lily suffered a sudden complication. 2 days later, she was gone." A stunned silence fell between them. The thought of a respected doctor deliberately sabotaging lives overwhelmed Edward. "I need you to take Mia to see Dr. Wells tomorrow," Anthony urged. "She's agreed to meet us discreetly. If we can establish that your daughter can regain her vision, we can do more than expose Dr. Peterson." Edward's fierce determination sparked. "If what you're saying holds true, we will dismantle him and all connected to him." A plan of action began to form that night. Edward would mobilize his resources, media connections, private investigators, top-tier attorneys, while Anthony contributed his extensive knowledge gathered from years of solitary contemplation. The following day, under the guise of a family outing, Edward brought Mia to Dr. Wells's clinic. The examination was thorough and unrelenting, confirming the unthinkable. Mia's blindness was indeed reversible. The initial diagnosis was either an egregious miscalculation or a willful distortion. As they left the clinic, Edward felt Mia's small hand squeeze his, an affirmation of hope reigniting in his chest. What had begun as suspicion had transformed into a united mission, a partnership between a white millionaire and a black bricklayer, both men shattered by common misdeeds and bonded by the unwavering love for their daughters. Dr. Peterson couldn't have foreseen that while he continued his deceptive practices, a relentless storm was brewing, one that would uncover every facet of his carefully constructed empire of lies. The courtroom fell silent as Dr. Peterson was led away in handcuffs, his web of deceit unraveling within hours, foreign to the once seemingly untouchable status he had formerly enjoyed. "This is merely the beginning," the prosecutor announced, raising voices as he revealed that over 40 children had been victimized due to Dr. Peterson's fraudulent treatments. As they exited the courthouse, surrounded by reporters, Edward and Anthony remained interconnected, Mia holding on to both their hands tightly as a serene smile graced her face. "Mr. Hawthorne, how did you uncover the truth?" one reporter pressed. "The truth finds unexpected paths," Edward answered candidly, locking eyes with Anthony. "Sometimes we must lose everything to truly see and appreciate what matters." 3 months later, the Zoe Foundation was inaugurated in a small yet meaningful ceremony. Constructed in a fraction of the time due to Edward's extensive resources, the center was already treating several children who had been misdiagnosed by Dr. Peterson. "We didn't just want accountability," Anthony explained at the opening, his voice rich with passion. "We aspired to turn our pain into hope for other families." Dr. Wells, now the Foundation's medical director, had incorporated Dr. Peterson's experimental methods. Ironically, the very research that could have saved so many, including Lily, had been buried beneath the weight of greed. As Mia's vision improved with each passing week, she took center stage as the face of the Foundation. Her story resonated with families, encouraging them to seek second opinions regarding their children's diagnoses and defy what initially appeared as definitive truths. Meanwhile, Dr. Peterson's empire disintegrated. Hospitals associated with him were inundated with multi-million-dollar lawsuits, and colleagues who had chosen to protect his malpractices were indicted. The very system that had upheld his negligence for so many years turned on him with unyielding force. Edward, irrevocably transformed by this experience, recalibrated his values. Hawthorne Enterprises, once solely focused on profit, redirected 30% of its projects toward children's hospitals and medical research centers. "Mia taught me that while our eyes may open, we still may not see what is truly meaningful," he confessed in a rare interview. On a deeply poignant afternoon, while Mia played with other children in the Foundation's garden, Edward discovered Anthony watching, tears of gratitude welling in his eyes. "Lily would have been 11 today," Anthony said softly, as Edward nodded in silent solidarity. "Do you believe we did justice for her?" Edward queried, reflecting on their winding, tumultuous journey. "Justice differs from revenge," Anthony articulated thoughtfully. "Revenge would have been to destroy Dr. Peterson and leave it at that. Justice is ensuring that centuries of evil don't repeat themselves." "You know what haunts me the most?" Edward continued. "If it weren't for you, I may never have learned the truth. I would have lived the rest of my days away from my daughter, convinced her condition was irreversible." "And if it weren't for your influence," Anthony added, "I wouldn't have been able to expose Dr. Peterson." My voice alone lacked the reach required to capture attention. As if cast by fate, a new face arrived at the Foundation soon after, a little girl, Emma Wilson, aged 7, diagnosed with the same condition that had left Mia in darkness. Her parents, having lost hope due to financial constraints, found a glimmer of justice in the Foundation's offerings. "You can always tell when a child regains their sight," Dr. Wells informed Anthony and Edward during Emma's first consultation. "There's a moment when they begin to follow the world around them, and then suddenly their face lights up with recognition." A year after Dr. Peterson's trial, the Zoe Foundation's garden celebrated a cherished event. Mia, now almost fully sighted, blew out the candles on her birthday cake alongside Emma and other children who had recovered from similar plight. Watching the array of joyful children, Edward realized that, like Mia, he too had shed his blindness. Before Anthony's presence, Edward had existed within the confines of wealth, an empty shell hidden behind a wall of privilege. "There is a blindness worse than physical blindness," he confessed to Anthony. "It is the blindness of those who only see power, status, and wealth." On the foundation's wall, a simple plaque memorialized a powerful message, in memory of Lily Davis, who taught them to see beyond appearances. From shared tragedy emerged an extraordinary partnership, redefining family, reshaping lives, and demonstrating that the most profound bonds are rooted not in blood, but forged through compassion, shared missions, and an understanding that differences are trivial against the values that join us together. If this story of justice and redemption resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel. Sometimes, loss can be an eye-opener, revealing what truly matters in life.